I never thought I'd be the kind of person to air my dirty laundry on the internet. I was always private, the type who kept family business within the family, who smiled through difficulties and handled things with grace behind closed doors. But then again, I never thought my husband of 8 years would his assistant in every mid-range hotel within a 50-mile radius of our home while I was taking care of our 2 kids either. Life has a way of turning you into someone you never imagined you'd become. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago I had what I thought was a picture-perfect life. My husband Mark and I met in college. One of those romantic comedies meet cuties where he spilled coffee on my laptop in the library and spent the next 3 hours helping me make sure it still worked, which turned into dinner, which turned into 8 years of marriage and 2 beautiful children. Emma is 6 and Liam just turned 4. We had a nice house in the suburbs, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and every boring, beautiful cliché you could imagine. Mark worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, and I worked part-time as a graphic designer from home, so I could be there for the kids. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We went on family vacations, had date nights twice a month, and still had sex regularly, or at least I thought it was regular. Apparently, I didn't know what regular meant. The first crack in my perfect world came on a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because that was the day Emma had soccer practice and I was running late trying to get Liam to stop crying about wanting to bring his entire collection of toy dinosaurs in the car. Mark had left his iPad on the kitchen counter, which wasn't unusual. He often forgot it because he primarily used his phone and laptop for work. The thing was charging and I noticed the screen light up with a notification. I wasn't trying to snoop. I really wasn't. But the preview message that appeared on the screen made my blood run cold. Last night was incredible. I can still feel you inside me. The message was from someone named Jenna with a little heart emoji next to her name. My hands started shaking. There had to be an explanation, right? Maybe it was a spam message. Maybe his iPad got hacked. Maybe it was meant for someone else in some group chat and the names got confused. I unlocked the phone policy in our marriage. We knew each other's passwords. We had nothing to hide. Or at least I had nothing to hide. What I found when I opened his messages made me physically sick. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up my breakfast. There were thousands of messages between Mark and Jenna going back almost a year. A full year of good morning beautiful texts, explicit photos that made me want to bleach my eyes. Detailed descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other. And worst of all, messages about me. About how I'd let myself go after the kids. About how I was always tired and never in the mood. About how being with her made him feel alive again. They had pet names for each other. He called her his little firecracker, and she called him Daddy, which made me want to vomit all over again, because that's what our children called him. I sat on that bathroom floor for I don't know how long just staring at the wall, feeling like my entire reality had shattered. Every memory I had was now suspect. Every time he'd worked late, every business trip, every time he'd been on his phone and smiled and said it was just work stuff when I asked, all of it was lies. Our whole life was built on lies. But here's the thing about shock. It eventually turns into something else. For some people, it's depression. For others, it's acceptance. For me, it turned into rage. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you scream and throw things, though that came later. This was cold, calculated rage. The kind that makes you think clearly, maybe for the first time in years. I realized I had a choice to make. I could confront him privately. We could go to therapy. Maybe try to work it out for the sake of the kids like everyone always says you should do. Or I could do something else entirely. I chose something else. First, I needed to think. I picked up Liam, who had finally stopped crying about his dinosaurs. Got Emma to soccer practice somehow, even though I felt like I was moving through water the entire time. I smiled and chatted with the other moms, and nobody noticed that anything was wrong. That's when I realized how good I'd gotten at pretending everything was fine. All those times I was exhausted from taking care of the kids and the house while Mark worked late. All those times I pushed down my frustration and loneliness and told myself this was just what marriage was like. This was just a phase. He was just stressed with work. I'd been pretending for so long that it was second nature. When I got home, Mark was already there cooking dinner like everything was normal. He kissed me on the cheek, asked how soccer practice was, ruffled Liam's hair. He was such a good actor. How had I never noticed? Or maybe I had noticed and I just made excuses because it was easier than facing the truth. "You forgot your iPad this morning?" I said, keeping my voice steady as I handed it to him. "Oh, thanks, babe," he said, not even a flicker of concern in his eyes. I was looking for that. That night, after we put the kids to bed, after we watched Netflix on the couch with his arm around me like we'd done 1,000 times before, after he kissed me goodnight and rolled over to go to sleep, I lay awake and made my plan. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I was going to gather evidence. Every text, every photo, every hotel receipt, every credit card statement. I was going to document everything. And then I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly who Mark really was. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, but someone I was grimly proud of. I installed a recovery program on his iPad that backed up all his messages to a cloud account only I had access to. I went through our credit card statements and highlighted every charge that was suspicious. There were so many. Hotels, restaurants, lingerie from Victoria's Secret that I'd never received. Flowers from 1800 flowers that never showed up at our house. He'd even used our joint account for some of it. That's how little he respected me. That's how sure he was that I'd never notice or never question him. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Tax Documents 2023 because I knew Mark would never open something that boring. Inside, I compiled everything. Screenshots of their text conversations organized by date. His location history from Google Maps, which he'd never thought to turn off, showing repeated visits to the same 3 hotels. Photos she'd sent him. Photos he'd sent her, including some taken in our bedroom in our bed when I'd been away visiting my sister. That discovery made me cry so hard I thought I might break a rib. But I saved those photos too. But I didn't just want evidence of the affair. I wanted context. I wanted to know who this woman was who'd been my husband for a year. It didn't take long to figure out. Jenna Calloway, 26 years old, Mark's assistant at work. Of course, she was his assistant. Of course, she was 8 years younger than me with no kids, no stretch marks, no exhaustion from waking up 3 times a night with a teething baby or getting thrown up on, or spending her days negotiating with a 6-year-old about why we can't have ice cream for breakfast. She had an Instagram full of gym selfies and brunch photos and inspirational quotes about being a boss babe and living your best life. She'd even liked some of my posts, probably laughing at me the whole time. I started following her on a fake account, watching her stories, learning her routine. She posted everything online, which made my job easier. She checked in at restaurants, at bars, and at hotels. She posted cryptic quotes about loving someone you can't have and forbidden love with stupid emoji. She had no idea I was watching, collecting everything. The texts between them were the worst part. I read every single one, torturing myself with the details. They talked about running away together. He told her he was going to leave me, that he just needed to wait for the right time. He said he didn't love me anymore, that he maybe never really loved me, that marrying me was a mistake he made when he was too young to know better. He said the only good things to come from our marriage were Emma and Liam. And even then, he complained about how much time they took up, how he barely got any time to himself anymore. Meanwhile, to my face, he was planning our 10-year anniversary trip. We were supposed to go to Hawaii, just the 2 of us. His parents were going to watch the kids. He showed me hotel options and asked which one I liked better. I wanted to scream at him to throw his iPad at his head to ask him if he was planning to take Jenna instead, but I didn't. I smiled and said the hotel with the ocean view looked perfect. And I watched him make the reservation, all while knowing I was going to burn his entire life to the ground before we ever got on that plane. I started seeing a lawyer telling Mark I was meeting up with my friend Rachel for coffee. The lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s named Patricia Chin, was exactly what I needed. She didn't try to talk me into reconciliation or therapy. She looked at the evidence I'd compiled, nodded slowly, and said, "You have everything we need. He's going to regret underestimating you." We discussed my options. Divorce was inevitable, but Patricia advised me to be strategic about timing. In our state, evidence of adultery could impact the division of assets and custody arrangements. She told me to keep gathering evidence to act normal, to not let him know I knew anything. She also told me to start securing my own finances, which I did. I opened a separate bank account and started funneling money into it. Small amounts that wouldn't be noticed. I took pictures of every valuable item in our house, documented all our assets. I was preparing for war. But evidence for the divorce wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted public humiliation. I wanted everyone who knew us, who thought we were the perfect couple, who'd probably gossip about me and judge me when the divorce came out to know the truth. I wanted his family to know, his friends, his coworkers, everyone. That's when I got the idea. I was scrolling through Reddit late one night, unable to sleep, reading posts in various relationship forums. I saw how people shared their stories, how supportive strangers could be, but also how stories could blow up and spread. I'd heard about posts going viral, being picked up by those Facebook pages that share Reddit stories, sometimes even making it to news sites if they were dramatic enough. And my story was definitely dramatic. But I didn't want to just post on Reddit. I wanted to do something bigger, something that would make sure everyone in our social circle saw it. That's when I thought of Facebook. Mark was very active on Facebook. It was part of his job to maintain a professional network. He had friends, family, coworkers, clients, all connected there. So did I. Our profiles were full of happy family photos, check-ins at nice restaurants, anniversary posts about how lucky we were to have found each other. The digital scrapbook of our perfect lie. I decided I would post everything there. Every text, every photo, every receipt. I would create a photo album that told the complete story of Mark's affair. But I needed to be smart about it. If I posted it on my account, Mark might see it and immediately report it, get it taken down before enough people saw it. I needed to make sure maximum people saw it before he could do damage control. So, I planned it for a specific day and time. Mark had a big regional sales meeting on a Friday, 3 weeks away. It was a quarterly thing where all the regional managers and their teams gathered for presentations and networking. Jenna would be there, too, as his assistant. The meeting started at 9 a.m. and usually ran until noon, during which time everyone was expected to have their phones off or silenced. It was the perfect window. In the meantime, I played the part of the loving wife so well, I should have won an Oscar. I initiated sex a few times, which seemed to surprise and please Mark. I didn't enjoy it. I felt like I was betraying myself every time I touched him, but I needed him to think everything was fine. I planned elaborate family dinners, took cute photos of the kids, and posted them with captions about being blessed and grateful for my little family. I even sent Mark sweet text messages during the day, telling him I loved him, that I appreciated how hard he worked for us. He ate it up. His texts with Jenna during this time showed him saying how guilty he felt, how I was being so nice to him, and he didn't deserve it. Jenna told him he didn't owe me anything, that he deserved to be happy, that I was probably just being clingy because I was insecure. Reading that made me want to find her and rip her hair out, but I saved those screenshots too. 3 days before the big meeting, Mark went on what he said was a business trip to Chicago. According to his location history and the credit card statements, he was actually at a holiday in 40 minutes away with Jenna. This was perfect. I had him send me a selfie from Chicago, which was clearly taken in a hotel room. I reverse image searched the art on the wall behind him and found it was a generic print sold in bulk to hotels. More evidence for the pile. While he was gone, I finalized everything. I had hundreds of screenshots organized chronologically to tell a story. I had credit card statements with highlighted charges totaling over $15,000 spent on his affair. I had hotel receipts I'd found in his car, some with room service charges that showed he'd ordered champagne and strawberries, the kind of romantic gestures he used to do for me but hadn't in years. I had their entire text conversation backed up, including the nudes and the discussions about their future together and the cruel things they'd said about me. I also did something else. I hired a private investigator for one day, the day Mark was supposedly in Chicago. The Pi got photos of Mark and Jenna checking into the hotel together. Photos of them kissing in the parking lot. Photos of them leaving the next morning. They weren't cheap photos, but they were worth every penny. You couldn't deny what they showed. There was no way for Mark to claim the texts were taken out of context or that it was just emotional and never physical. The evidence was irrefutable. I created a Facebook album titled The Truth About My Marriage. I uploaded everything. I wrote a long post to go with it detailing the timeline of the affair, explaining how I discovered it, including screenshots where Mark talked about leaving me and where he and Jenna mocked me. I tagged Mark. I tagged Jenna. I tagged Mark's parents and siblings. I tagged our mutual friends. I tagged some of Mark's coworkers whose profiles were public. I set it to public so anyone could see it, not just friends. But I didn't post it yet. I saved it as a draft. I wanted to be sure about the timing. The night before the big meeting, Mark came home with flowers. Grocery store flowers. Nothing fancy, but he presented them like he'd done something incredible. Just because, he said, kissing me. I know I've been working a lot lately, and I wanted you to know I appreciate you holding down the fort. I wanted to laugh in his face. I wanted to tell him I knew he'd been balls deep in his assistant 2 days ago. Instead, I smiled and said, "That's so sweet, honey. You're the best husband." The words tasted like poison, but I said them. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking and rechecking everything, making sure all the evidence was uploaded correctly, that the post was ready to go. I set an alarm for 9:15 a.m. The meeting would have started, phones would be away, and I'd have at least 2 hours before Mark or Jenna could possibly see what I'd done. Mark got up at 6 o'clock to get ready for the meeting. I got up with him, made him breakfast, kissed him goodbye. "I hope your meeting goes well," I said. "Thanks, babe. It's going to be boring as hell, but that's corporate life," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "I'll probably be home around 2. Maybe we can do something this weekend, just us. My parents said they'd take the kids." "That sounds perfect." I lied. After he left, I got the kids ready for school. Did the whole morning routine on autopilot. Breakfast, brushing teeth, finding lost shoes, packing lunches. I dropped Emma at school and Liam at daycare, chatting with other parents, laughing at someone's joke about how Friday couldn't come fast enough. They had no idea that my Friday was about to be very different from theirs. I went home and sat on the couch with my laptop, watching the clock. Biscuit sat next to me, resting his head on my lap like he knew I needed comfort. At 9:15 exactly, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I clicked post. The album went live. Dozens of photos, hundreds of screenshots, all laid out in chronological order, telling the story of my husband's year-long affair. The post itself was long, but I'd written it to be compelling to draw people in. I started with the discovery, the message on the iPad, the shock and betrayal. I detailed how long the affair had been going on, how much money he'd spent, how they'd used our bed. I included quotes from their texts, the worst ones, including where Mark said marrying me was a mistake, and where Jenna said I was too boring for someone like Mark. I ended with a statement about how I was posting this, because I was done protecting men who didn't deserve it, done being quiet about being wronged, done letting cheaters control the narrative. Within 5 minutes, the reactions started rolling in. Shocked faces, angry faces, crying faces, comments of support, of outrage, of disbelief. "Oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. What a piece of crap. You deserve so much better. I can't believe Mark would do this. He always seemed so nice. That home wrecking witch." The notifications were coming so fast I couldn't keep up. Then the shares started. Friends sharing it, acquaintances sharing it, people I barely knew sharing it. Each share multiplied the audience. I watched in real time as the post spread through our social network like wildfire. Mark's college friends were seeing it. His cousins, his aunt, who always complained about Facebook drama, but apparently not when it was this juicy. My old coworkers, our neighbors. Emma's friends' parents from school. At 9:45, Mark's brother called me. I didn't answer. Then his sister, then his mom. My phone was ringing nonstop, texts pouring in. I turned it on Do Not Disturb and just watched the Facebook notifications pile up. The post had been shared over 100 times in the first hour. People who weren't even connected to Mark or me were commenting. Strangers who'd seen it shared by a friend of a friend, all weighing in on what a terrible person my husband was, how brave I was for exposing him, asking for updates. At 10:30, I got a text from Patricia, my lawyer. I saw your post. Bold move. Make sure you document any threatening or harassing messages from Mark or his family. They could be relevant. I appreciated that she didn't lecture me about going public. She got it. At 11, my best friend Rachel showed up at my door, having apparently broken several traffic laws to get there. Holy crap, Sarah, she said, pulling me into a hug. Holy hell, are you okay? That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. But are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was terrified and exhilarated and sick to my stomach. All at once. But I was also free. For the first time in weeks since I discovered the affair, I felt like I could breathe. I think so. I said, is it blowing up? Blowing up, Sarah. You broke Facebook. Everyone is talking about it. It's all over my feed. People who don't even know you are sharing it. You're a legend. We sat together watching the fallout unfold. The post kept being shared. The comments kept pouring in. Some people criticized me for airing private business publicly, for thinking about the kids, for being vindictive. But they were drowned out by the overwhelming support. Women sharing their own stories of being cheated on, praising me for not protecting Mark's reputation, saying they wished they'd had the courage to do what I did. At 11:45, someone commented that this post was showing up on Twitter now. Someone had screenshotted it and posted it there, and it was getting retweeted. This was spiraling beyond anything I had imagined. I felt a momentary panic. Had I gone too far? But then I remembered Mark's texts about me, Jenna's cruel comments, the photos of them in my bed, and the panic faded. They deserved this. At 12:15, my phone started ringing off the hook again. The meeting must have ended. Mark was calling. Jenna was calling. Mark's boss was calling. Numbers I didn't recognize were calling. I ignored all of them. I did, however, check Mark's location on Find My Friends, an app we'd both installed years ago for safety. He was at the office still, probably in full damage control mode. Then the text from Mark started coming through. At first, they were confused. Sarah, what's going on? People are saying you posted something on Facebook. Call me. Then angry. What the hell did you do? Take that post down right now. Then desperate. Please, Sarah, we need to talk about this privately. Please take it down. Think about the kids. Then nasty. You're crazy. You've always been unstable. This is exactly why our marriage fell apart. Then back to desperate. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. Please, we can fix this. Just take the post down. I didn't respond to any of them. I just screenshotted them all and added them to the album. Update. The cheater has discovered the post. Here are his responses. Notice the cycle of denial, anger, and manipulation. Classic narcissist behavior. That update got shared even more than the original post. Rachel stayed with me all day. We ordered pizza, let the kids have extra screen time when I picked them up from school, and watched my Facebook post take on a life of its own. By evening, it had been shared over 1,000 times. Someone had created a hashtag on Twitter, #JusticeForSarah. A popular Instagram account that shared relationship drama had posted about it. A TikToker had made a video summarizing the situation that got 2 million views in a few hours. I'd gone viral. My personal tragedy had become internet entertainment. And weirdly, I was okay with it because every share, every comment, every supportive message was validation that I wasn't crazy, that what Mark did was wrong, that I had every right to be angry. Mark came home around 6 o'clock. I've been half expecting him not to come home at all to go stay with Jenna or his parents or a friend. But he came home and he was furious. He slammed the door so hard that Emma and Liam looked up from their iPads, startled. I'd already told Rachel to take them to her place for a sleepover, something I'd arranged that morning. I'd known this confrontation was coming, and I didn't want the kids to witness it. Rachel's going to take the kids for a sleepover tonight, I said calmly. Emma, Liam, go get your overnight bags. Rachel's waiting outside. But it's not even dark yet, Emma protested. I know, sweetie, but mommy and daddy need to talk about some grown-up stuff. You're going to have so much fun with Rachel and her kids. Mark looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't without making a scene in front of the kids. He stood there, jaw clenched, while I got the kids ready and walked them out to Rachel's car. You got this, Rachel whispered. Yeah, I'll text you later. When I came back inside, Mark was pacing the living room like a caged animal. What the actual F, Sarah? What the hell was that? Do you have any idea what you've done? I exposed you for the cheating piece of crap you are, I said, my voice steady. That's what I did. You humiliated me. You posted private conversations, private photos. You tagged my family, my coworkers. My boss saw that post. Sarah, do you understand? My boss, I'm probably going to lose my job. You should have thought about that before you slept with your assistant for a year. Don't act all high and mighty. You went through my private messages. You spied on me. You violated my privacy. I actually laughed at that. Your privacy. Your privacy. You having another woman in our bed. Mark, in the bed where we sleep. Where we made love. Where I've comforted you when you were stressed. Where you've held me when I was sad. You brought her into our home. And you're talking to me about privacy. It was a mistake. Okay, I made a mistake. But this, he gestured wildly at nothing. This is psychotic. You don't air this kind of thing publicly. You don't humiliate someone like this. We could have handled these like adults gone to therapy. Worked it out. Worked it out. You told her you were going to leave me. You told her marrying me was a mistake. You said you didn't love me anymore. What exactly were we going to work out? He was silent for a moment. Then you read all of our messages. Every single one. Every dirty text. Every plan you made. Every cruel thing you said about me. I read it all and then I shared it so everyone could see who you really are. Jenna is getting death threats. Sarah, people are messaging her horrible things, calling her a homewrecker. Someone found out where she lives and posted her address. She's terrified. Good. I said, and I meant it. She should be terrified. She knowingly slept with a married man with a father of two. She talked about me, laughed about me, helped you betray your family. She deserves every bit of fear she's feeling. Jesus Christ, when did you become so vindictive? When I found out my husband was cheating on me and spent a year lying to my face. We yelled at each other for another hour. He tried every tactic, anger, guilt, gaslighting, bargaining. He told me I was crazy, that I'd ruined his life, that I'd damaged our kids by doing this so publicly. He tried to claim the affair meant nothing, that he did still love me, that Jenna had pursued him and he'd been weak. He promised he'd end it, that he'd do anything to make it right, that we could move past this. I didn't budge. I want a divorce, I said. I've already contacted a lawyer. You need to move out. This is my house too. Then I'll move out with the kids. Either way, I'm not living with you anymore. You can stay here tonight, but I want you gone by tomorrow. You can't just kick me out of my own house. Watch me. And if you try to fight me on this, I have plenty more evidence I didn't post. Do you want me to share the video Jenna sent you? The one from 2 months ago? I kept that one private out of respect for the fact that our kids might see this someday, but I can always add it to the album. His face went white. You wouldn't try me. He left that night, went to stay at a hotel. Ironically, I slept in our bed alone for the first time in 8 years, and I slept better than I had in weeks. The next few days were chaos. The Facebook post continued to spread. News outlets started reaching out to me for interviews. A local news station wanted to do a segment on viral divorce revelations. I declined most of them, but I did agree to one interview with an online magazine that focused on women's issues. I wanted to control my narrative to explain why I'd done what I did. In the interview, I talked about the culture of protecting men's reputations at the expense of women's dignity. I talked about how society tells women to be quiet, to handle things privately, to not make waves even when they've been betrayed and humiliated. I talked about how empowering it was to take control of my story, to refuse to be the silent victim. The article went viral too. Shared hundreds of thousands of times, sparking debates about privacy versus accountability, about whether public shaming was ever justified, about infidelity in marriage and revenge. I became a polarizing figure. Some people thought I was a hero, a woman who'd stood up for herself in a spectacular way. Others thought I was cruel, vindictive, that I'd crossed a line. Think pieces were written about me about my post about what it meant for privacy in the digital age. I was invited on podcasts, asked to write op-eds, offered book deals to tell my full story. Meanwhile, the real-world consequences unfolded. Mark did lose his job. The company said it was due to conduct unbecoming and violation of their fraternization policy. Having an affair with a subordinate was apparently a fireable offense, especially when it became extremely public knowledge. Jenna was fired too for the same reasons. Mark's family was divided. His mother called me crying, begging me to take the post down, saying I was destroying her son's life. His sister, on the other hand, called to say she'd always thought Mark was spoiled and entitled, and that he got what he deserved. His brother didn't take sides publicly, but sent me a private message saying he was sorry for what I'd gone through. My family was completely supportive. My mom flew out to stay with me for a week, helping with the kids, bringing me wine and ice cream, telling me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. My dad, who'd always liked Mark, said he'd never forgive him for what he'd done to me and his grandkids. The divorce proceedings began. Patricia was brilliant. With all the public evidence of Mark's affair and the financial records showing he'd spent marital assets on his mistress, we had a strong case. Mark's lawyer tried to argue that my public post was evidence of me being unstable and vindictive, that I shouldn't have primary custody of the kids. But Patricia countered that exposing infidelity wasn't evidence of being a bad mother, and that Mark's choices, his betrayal of his family, his violation of his wedding vows were far more relevant to determining custody. The custody evaluation didn't go well for Mark. The evaluator noted that he'd prioritized his affair over his family, that he'd lied extensively, that his judgment was questionable. While I'd made a dramatic choice in posting publicly, it was a one-time action in response to extreme emotional distress, not a pattern of unstable behavior. I got primary custody. Mark got every other weekend and one evening a week. The asset division was satisfying because Mark had spent significant marital funds on his affair. The judge ordered that he compensate me for those expenses. Between the hotels, the gifts, the dinners, it added up to over $20,000. Combined with a fair split of our other assets and child support, I came out of the divorce in decent financial shape. But the best part, the most satisfying part, wasn't the money or the custody or even the viral support. It was watching Mark face consequences for his actions. He thought he could have it all. The stable family life and the exciting affair, the devoted wife at home, and the hot young girlfriend on the side. He thought he was smart enough, charming enough to pull it off. And when he got caught, he'd expected me to react the way society tells women to react, with private tears and quiet dignity, maybe some dramatic confrontation behind closed doors, but ultimately with discretion. He never expected me to burn it all down publicly. He never expected me to refuse to protect his reputation. And that's what killed him. The fact that I'd taken away his ability to control the narrative. He couldn't tell people we'd grown apart or that it was complicated or feed them some bull about how we'd mutually decided to separate. Everyone knew exactly what had happened. Everyone knew he was a cheater. He couldn't go anywhere without people knowing, without judging him. He had to move to a different city eventually. Couldn't find work in our area because the story had spread so far locally. His LinkedIn was flooded with comments from people who'd seen the post. His professional reputation was destroyed. Some people thought that was too harsh, that I'd ruined his career. But I didn't ruin his career. He ruined his career when he decided to cheat with his subordinate. Jenna faced consequences too. Her Instagram, which had been public, was flooded with hateful comments until she deleted it. She couldn't find work in her field for months because a Google search of her name brought up the whole scandal. She eventually moved too, from what I heard through the grapevine. I didn't feel bad for her. She knew Mark was married, knew he had kids, and she pursued him anyway. Or he pursued her. I don't know which. And I don't care. They made their choices and they faced the consequences. As for me, life slowly returned to a new normal. The viral post eventually faded from the internet's collective consciousness, replaced by newer scandals and dramas. I kept the post up though. I never deleted it. It's still there, a permanent record of what happened. A digital scarlet letter, but one that Mark has to wear, not me. I threw myself into being the best mom I could be. Emma and Liam adjusted to the divorce better than I'd feared. Kids are resilient. We had family therapy. We talked about it in age-appropriate ways. And they knew that mommy and daddy still loved them even though we didn't love each other anymore. They didn't know the details of why we split. And they wouldn't until they were much older, if ever. I started my graphic design business full-time, and ironically, the viral post had brought me clients. People reached out wanting to work with me, women especially, who admired what I'd done and wanted to support me. My business grew beyond what I'd ever achieved working part-time. I went on dates eventually, though it was terrifying at first, but I was upfront about my baggage, about the viral divorce post that would come up if anyone Googled me. Most guys were understanding. Some were even impressed by it. I didn't rush into anything serious. I was focused on healing, on rebuilding my life, on being there for my kids. About 6 months after the post, I got a message on Facebook from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Amanda, and she said she'd seen my post when it went viral. She wanted to thank me because it had given her the courage to leave her own abusive marriage. She said seeing me refuse to be quiet, refuse to protect someone who'd hurt me, had made her realize she didn't have to protect her husband either. She'd filed for divorce and was rebuilding her life, and she credited my post with giving her that push. I cried reading that message. I got others like it over time. Women telling me my story had helped them, had empowered them, had made them feel less alone. That's when I realized that what I'd done, as messy and dramatic and controversial as it was, had meaning beyond my personal revenge. It had started conversations, had challenged the idea that women should suffer in silence, had shown that sometimes burning bridges and salting the earth is exactly what you need to do to move forward. Do I regret posting it? People ask me that all the time. The honest answer is no, I don't. Did it make things messy, eh? Yes. Did it create complications? Absolutely. Did some people judge me harshly for it? Of course. But it also freed me. It took the power away from Mark and gave it back to me. It let me control my narrative. It held him accountable in a way that a private divorce never would have. Would I recommend everyone in my situation do what I did? Not necessarily. It's not for everyone. It requires being willing to weather the storm of public attention, being willing to be criticized and judged, being willing to have your personal life dissected by strangers on the internet. But for me, it was exactly what I needed. It's been almost 2 years now since I made that post. Life is good. Different, but good. I have a career I'm proud of. Kids who are happy and healthy. Friends who stuck by me through everything. I've even been casually seeing someone for a few months. A divorced dad I met at one of Emma's soccer games. Someone who knows my history and doesn't judge me for it. I still see Mark occasionally at kid exchanges. It's cordial but cold. He's dating someone new, a woman closer to his age who apparently doesn't know about his history based on the fact that she's still with him. I wonder sometimes if I should warn her, show her the post, but I mind my business. She'll find out eventually who he really is. Guys like Mark don't change. Jenna reached out once about a year after everything happened. She sent me a long email apologizing, saying she'd been immature and selfish, that she regretted everything, that she hoped I could forgive her someday. I never responded. I don't forgive her, and I don't need to. Forgiveness is for people who have earned it, and she hasn't. The Facebook post is still up. Every few months, someone new discovers it, and it gets a new wave of shares and comments. It's become this weird piece of internet history, a cautionary tale, a revenge story, a conversation starter about privacy and accountability, and how we treat infidelity in modern relationships. Sometimes I go back and read through the original comments, the hundreds and thousands of messages of support from complete strangers. They remind me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't wrong, that what I felt and what I did came from a place of justified anger and hurt. People have asked me if I'd ever take the post down. Mark asked through lawyers and through mutual acquaintances. His new girlfriend apparently asked him to ask me to delete it. His mother asks every time she sees me, but I won't. That post is my truth. It's the evidence of what happened, the record of his betrayal, and my response. Taking it down would be like saying I regret standing up for myself, and I don't. I've thought about writing this all out fully, the whole story from start to finish, maybe as a book or a blog. Part of me worries it's exploiting my pain for attention, but another part of me thinks there's value in sharing the full story, the parts that didn't make it into the Facebook post, the emotional journey, the aftermath, all of it. Because here's what I learned from all of this. You don't have to be quiet. You don't have to protect people who hurt you. You don't have to handle betrayal with grace and dignity if you don't want to. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to want revenge. You're allowed to make sure everyone knows the truth, even if it's messy and uncomfortable and makes people clutch their pearls about privacy and airing dirty laundry. I was told my whole life to be nice, to be understanding, to not make waves, to consider other people's feelings before my own. And where did that get me? Married to a man who felt comfortable enough to cheat on me for a year because he knew I'd never cause a scene. I'd never do anything to embarrass him or rock the boat. But I did rock the boat. I capsized that thing, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. The funniest part of all of this, the part that still makes me laugh when I think about it, is that Mark's biggest concern throughout the whole thing was his reputation. Not my pain, not the kids' well-being, not the destruction of our family, his reputation. He was so worried about what people would think of him, how this would affect his career, his social standing, his image. And that told me everything I needed to know. He didn't love me. Maybe he never did. Or maybe he did once and it faded. I don't know. But by the end, I was just a supporting character in his life story, someone to maintain his household and raise his kids and be there for family photos while he had his real fun elsewhere. The viral post flipped the script. Suddenly, he wasn't the successful sales manager with the perfect family. He was the cheater, the liar, the villain in a story that thousands of people were reading and judging, and he couldn't stand it. Good. He shouldn't be able to stand it. He should have to live with the consequences of his choices, just like I have to live with the consequence of mine. Though honestly, my consequence has been a better life without him. So, I'm not complaining. I've become sort of a minor internet celebrity in certain circles. I get recognized sometimes, not often, but it happens usually by women who read the post or heard about it, who want to tell me their own stories or thank me or just give me a high five. It's weird, but also kind of wonderful. This strange sisterhood of women who have been betrayed and are done being quiet about it. I've been asked to speak at a few events about my experience, about standing up for yourself, about not letting shame silence you when you're the one who is wronged. I'm not a natural public speaker, but I've done a few of these talks and they've been surprisingly rewarding. Telling my story to rooms full of people, watching them nod in recognition or tear up or laugh at the parts where I got my revenge, it's therapeutic in a way I didn't expect. Someone once asked me during AQ and if I worried about how this would affect my kids when they got older, when they could read the post and see all the details. It's something I've thought about a lot. Emma's already asking more questions about why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, why we got divorced. For now, I tell her that sometimes adults grow apart, that Daddy and I both love her but couldn't be married anymore. When she's older, if she wants to know the full truth, I'll tell her. I'll show her the post if she asks. I won't hide what her father did, but I'll also explain it in a way that helps her understand that none of it was her fault. That adult relationships are complicated, that people make choices, and those choices have consequences. I hope she learns from it. I hope she learns to value herself, to never accept betrayal or disrespect, to stand up for herself even when it's hard. I hope she learns that being nice doesn't mean being a doormat, that protecting yourself isn't the same as being cruel. And I hope Liam learns what kind of man not to be. I hope he sees his father's mistakes and chooses differently. I hope he learns that integrity matters, that your word matters, that the people you love deserve your honesty and loyalty. Maybe that's naive. Maybe the whole thing will just traumatize them and they'll resent me for making it all so public. But I don't think so. I think they'll understand eventually that I did what I had to do to protect myself and to show them that you don't have to accept being treated badly, even by people you love. The internet has a short memory for most things, but every so often my post resurfaces. Someone will share it in a Reddit thread about revenge stories, Or it'll get posted to Twitter with a new round of hot takes, or a TikToker will make a video about it. Each time I get a new wave of messages, some supportive, some critical, all of them reminding me that I did something that people are still talking about years later. I've been called a hero and a villain, brave and crazy, justified and cruel. I've been held up as an example of female empowerment and criticized as a cautionary tale about taking revenge too far. I've been the subject of think pieces and Reddit threads and Twitter debates. And through it all, I've stood by what I did. Because at the end of the day, Mark made a choice to betray me, to lie to me, to risk our family for an affair. And I made a choice not to suffer in silence. Both of us have to live with our choices. His choice cost him his marriage, his job, his reputation, and his relationship with his kids suffering because he sees them so much less now. My choice cost me what exactly? Some privacy, some criticism from people who think I should have handled it differently. A few awkward conversations, but what I gained was so much more. I gained my self-respect back. I gained control over my narrative. I gained a community of supporters. I gained freedom from a marriage that was built on lies. I gained a new life that's authentically mine. So no, I don't regret it. I'd post it all again. Every screenshot, every receipt, every dirty text message, and hotel lobby Snapchat, because Mark thought he could betray me without consequences, and I proved him spectacularly wrong. And that more than anything else, more than the viral fame, or the supportive messages, or the divorce settlement, that moment when he realized I wasn't going to protect him, I wasn't going to quietly accept his betrayal. That I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what he'd done. That moment of shock and horror on his face when he first saw the post. That was worth everything. I hope every woman who's been cheated on knows that she has options. You can handle it privately if that's what's right for you. You can go to therapy, try to reconcile, work it out, or you can burn it all down and walk away from the ashes without looking back. Both are valid. Neither makes you a good or bad person. It's about what you need to heal to move forward to reclaim your life. For me, I needed the fire. I needed to watch everything burn. I needed the world to see what had been done to me, to witness my pain and my anger and my refusal to be quietly victimized. I needed to take back power in the most public way possible. And you know what? It worked. I'm happier now than I was in my marriage, even before I knew about the affair. I think part of me knew something was wrong, that Mark wasn't fully present, that our connection had weakened. But I'd ignored it, made excuses, told myself it was just the stress of jobs and kids and life. Now I know what I won't accept. I know what I deserve. I know that I'm strong enough to blow up my life if that's what it takes to live authentically. And that knowledge, that self-assurance, is worth more than any intact reputation or private suffering. The post is still there. It'll probably always be there somewhere on the internet in screenshots and archives and shared links. My digital revenge, my public reckoning, my refusal to be silent. And I'm still here too. Stronger, wiser, free. Living my life on my terms, raising my kids, building my business, maybe even falling in love again someday with someone who deserves it. Mark is somewhere else. Probably still trying to rebuild his reputation. Still bitter about what I did, still playing the victim. Let him. I don't care anymore. He's not my problem. He's barely even a thought in my mind except when I have to coordinate kid pickups. The story of my viral divorce post has a lot of drama, a lot of shocking moments, a lot of revenge and betrayal and consequences. But the real story, the one that matters most to me, is simpler than all that. I was hurt. I got angry. I fought back. I survived. I thrived. And I'd do it all again.